Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Anna, and today I am doing a painting of my late horse, Tanzen. The big thing about this, though, is that I used 30-plus-year-old oil paint to do this painting. So my grandma left me her paint box, and it's just been sitting for the most part for the better part of 3 decades. She died when I was 7 and I am 35 now, and I don't think she used it much in the years directly preceding her death. I can't be sure about that, but yeah, this paint is roughly 30 years old. If you want to see a tour of that box and watch me get the paint ready to use and get the tubes open and stuff, go check out the previous video on my channel. This was an adventure. So I haven't actually used oil paint in at least a decade myself. So this is my first oil painting with traditional oil paints. I did a water-soluble oil painting just before this one. But yeah, my first one with traditional oil paints in over a decade. And I was curious to see how my grandma's paint would perform because, you know, it's quite old. So yeah, join me as I go through this adventure. I found that most of the paint felt really creamy and wonderful, but the browns were really gritty. And I can't tell you off the top of my head the name of the one specifically where I noticed it. It's that one right there. It was really, really gritty. Like, I could feel huge particles as I was mixing the paint with a palette knife, and I wondered if it would affect the painting, and yet I didn't feel it at all while I was painting. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. I don't know. I will be curious to see how this painting holds up in the years to come. I'm sure it will be fine, but it was definitely an adventure, and I don't know, this is weird because the whole painting process for me, like getting ready to oil paint, doing this oil painting, and doing the one of the cow for my brother, and because with that one I used my grandma's, a couple of her paintbrushes, and I used the palette that she used that my grandpa, made by hand. So that was kind of a visceral experience because I felt closer to them than I have since they passed away, and I was pretty young when my grandma passed away, so I didn't know her super, super well. But yeah, it just felt really amazing to be able to use items that my grandparents used, and that was just, I don't know, kind of lovely. And then this painting, Tanzen here, I had him for several years. He was already quite old when I got him. He was actually a gift from my dad's friend who couldn't care for him anymore at the time, and I was able to take him. And he was my heart horse. I had him from, I think he was early 20s, and I had him till he was 33. So about a decade. I think it was a little bit less than a decade. I would have to look to be sure on that. He was 31 when he passed away. And I don't know, it was just, because with time, you sort of lose the details of your memories, and they just sort of fade. And sometimes you find that something random will sort of jolt something back to life in your brain, and that happened while I was doing this painting. I especially that lighter part on his neck. I don't know, it just brought this visceral feeling back of petting his neck and brushing it and remembering the shape the shape of that spot. And that was just really neat, because that was never gonna come back without some really specific trigger. And maybe trigger's not the right word, that's usually a negative connotation, but you know what I mean, right? So that was kind of beautiful. And as for the painting process itself, I went into this with the goal of doing it quite quickly because I am the kind of person that gets really bogged down with details, and then I end up getting a lot more frustrated and things take a lot longer than I'd like them to, and that ended up happening anyway, and yet it went much faster than something normally would for me. So I went in with this big flat brush and was kind of trying to imitate Emily Hughes' style of painting. And I think that I succeeded for a while. After this first session, I slowly moved to smaller brushes, and my marks aren't quite as deliberate, and I get kind of to a point where I'm pushing paint around more, which is fine, I think, but I definitely enjoyed the process more when I was doing this right at the beginning, where I was trying to be more conscious of what I was doing in my mark making. And so I think the whole thing really is just that it's going to take me time because, you know, like I said at the beginning, this is the first oil painting that I have done in over a decade. And when I was painting before, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had no formal training. I had not read any books. I had not watched tutorials. That wasn't really a thing that I even had on my radar. So this, going into it now, like, I actually have some semblance of a bit of knowledge here. And so, yeah, I just think that I did better with this than I did with anything I had done in the past, but it's obviously going to take me time and practice and just giving myself the space and, again, the time to just get used to the paint and sort of learn my way through mixing it and values and just painting itself, my brush strokes and what I'm kind of going for. And I think that's going to be different depending on my subject matter and the size of the painting. I'm at this point not interested in limiting my style or subject matter or anything like that. I'm in a very exploratory phase with my art, so yeah, I just think I need to keep doing it and see where it takes me. But I really did enjoy the approach with this big flat brush. It was so freeing, especially painting this green background in. Like, I just had so much fun just putting paint on the canvas and filling it up. And in the end, I like the green a lot. I think that it is a really nice contrast with the chestnut coat on Tanzen, but I might have liked if I had a little bit more value and chroma contrast with the green in the background. I would have liked to maybe do a little bit more warm toned green, like leaning toward yellow ochre-ish, to make it look a little bit like there's more light coming through leaves perhaps in the background. I ultimately decided against adding that in because I had already spent some time feeling extremely frustrated with the painting, and I'm kind of in a crunch time right now to get a bunch of stuff done, and I just thought that it was one of those times where I needed to just kind of stand back and look at what I'd done and be pleased with it, and also just note on what I could learn from it and move forward, because I could keep going back in and changing things forever and ever, and I just felt like for my own mental health in this particular case, I needed to be done. And I will paint Tanzen again. I may even paint this exact reference again. So, you know, it's all good. I learned a lot, and I had so much fun doing it, and it was also a really emotional, kind of visceral experience, both in the sense of connecting with my grandmother and connecting with my horse, both of whom have passed away. So, you know, it was an amazing experience. I learned so much, and I don't know, like, I just, the first day, especially that first painting session, I was just in the throes of joy. Like, it was such a lovely experience. And then crunch time came, and the next few painting sessions, I was feeling quite stressed about it, and I stopped painting after about an hour. It was a day where I was like, I have to finish this painting today to get things done on time, etc., etc. And I think it's good to have deadlines, but they're not my favorite. Still, I stopped myself. I was like, yes, the goal is to get this done today, but right now do you ever do that thing where you're just really mad? And so everything seems like it's going wrong. And it was like, okay, if I keep going right now, I'm inevitably going to screw this up. And so I stopped myself and I took a break. I went and did some other things to get them off of my to-do list so that I would feel a little bit less stressed out, so that I would be able to relax and enjoy the process a little bit more. And I also kind of gave myself a little mental pep talk of the point of painting is to experiment and to enjoy the process. So this like frustrated, rushed thing is totally against the point. And so just breathe and go back into it with a different mindset. Like, reset the brain a little and then go back in. And it was still frustrating, you know, like I see so many things in this painting that I would like to change, that I don't feel like I got quite right. And yet overall it's actually kind of amazing, because I can look at it and see, okay, this isn't quite right, and the length of this is a little bit off, and this is too big, etc., etc. And I'm not going to go into like the specific details of that with you, because I have made a decision not to point out the flaws in my work publicly. I just want people to enjoy it for what it is. And so, but anyway, there are a lot of things that are not quite right for me. And so that's a little bit frustrating. At the same time, I can step back and look at it and I see my horse. I see him more vividly and more alive than I have since he was breathing and standing right in front of me. So that's kind of amazing, and you can hear my voice probably getting a little bit emotional. Yeah, because this is such a close-up of the image, and the colors are dark, but they're vibrant, and I feel really pleased with that, because I can see him and I can feel him in the work, and that's, you know, I think that's ultimately the goal when you're trying to capture any likeness. Yeah, and this particular reference, I took this picture on a day where, I don't know, you know, just the sun was just hitting just right. I have actually done another painting of him from a different reference on the same day. It's in watercolor. I'll throw that up on the screen right now. Yeah, so I don't know, they're just a collection of my favorite photos of him, because the lighting is just so, it's a little bit dramatic and it's so lovely, and it brings out the colors of his coat. And so I probably will paint this exact picture again, because I want to keep trying to capture it. I might even do it bigger at some point. We'll see how adventurous I feel. I'm just barely getting into this, so I'm trying not to go too completely crazy about it. But I feel like the fear that I used to have in doing my artwork it's like still there. It'll show up. Like, that's why I get frustrated, you know, like it's not going quite right, and I've got all these like fiddly little marks now, and I can't get the colors quite right or the values quite right. And yet, like, that's all still there, but I have this extremely lessened sense of fear compared to how I used to be. Like, I would have been terrified to even think about trying a bigger painting. And yet now the thought of that is just thrilling to me. Like, that sounds like so much fun. So, you know, growth is cool. Growth is really cool. Yeah, so I don't know, like, I'm probably gonna get a little bit rambly before the end of this. I feel like I've been kind of rambly anyway, but I'm glad you're here and you're still here. Do any of my viewers have a horse or like have been around horses a lot? I'm just curious. I am a huge horse lover. I don't have one right now. I don't know if I ever will again, hopefully, but life is very changeable. I've had 4. Sorry, no, that's wrong. I've had 5 horses over my lifetime, and Tanzen is the one I had the longest. And he was an Arabian, and he was a little bit of a nutcase, but he was my favorite nutcase in the whole world. Yeah. But yeah, if you are a horsey person and you have a horse in your life that you love, please feel free to tell me about that horse, because it would make me extremely happy. Yeah. I was really nervous about doing his muzzle because I felt like I was struggling with mixing the right values and colors. I kept holding my palette knife up to my photo, and I know that's not a perfect way to judge color and value, but it's better than nothing, and I'm just getting started. So yeah, but it still just felt like, because when you're right up against a painting, the whole thing can feel a little bit off, like it doesn't quite feel cohesive. And yet every time I stepped back to look at it, it was like, oh no, it's actually okay. I wish I'd left the ears how they are about right here, and they're not like terribly detailed or anything, but I like how they look right here as opposed to how they look at the end. They're a little bit messy, and like I said, I got to a point where I was less deliberate with my brush strokes, and things just kind of got more smooshed, which I think is okay if I'm going for that more blended look. But I actually really like the look of individual brush strokes. I like the idea of, I think it's called broken colors, where you just mix the next closest value and lay it down without actually blending. And that's something I would like to continue to improve at, but I think I did fairly good for most of this painting with doing that. I do like the idea of it being a little bit blended in some areas. Again, it's like, just depends on exactly what I'm going for. For this, I just really wanted to get it done faster, not fuss too much about the details. I did fuss, but not like I would have. This method of using a square brush, even a smaller one here, I was still paying a lot more attention than I used to. So, but like these brush strokes where I'm just like dabbing are not my favorite. And I think that if I had gone into it with the intention of blending more, this wouldn't bother me as much, but it sort of annoyed me. By the way, this is sped up from 1 times like normal time to about 1.5. So it's just sped up a tiny bit, because I didn't want you to be here for like 45 minutes or something. I did the eye a couple different times. It was okay, and then it was like, no, I need it to be more than okay, because that's Tanzen, and I want it to be Tanzen. So this eye here, I am happy with, and the eyelashes there, that looks more right to me than the other passes did on this painting. But yeah, we're coming to the end here. If you stayed till the end, please leave me a horse emoji in the comments. That would be amazing. And yeah, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of my work. I will continue doing oil paintings along with a whole bunch of other stuff as I go. Yeah. Also, again, if you want to see the paint box of my grandma and go through that with me and like the prep for this painting, yeah, go check out this video. I'll link it again in the cards and have a link for it in the description. Yeah, here's this fuzzy ear. I scraped off some of the paint because it was just getting really messy. And I go in again. Yeah, I wipe it off too a bit. But yeah, I go back in and still not totally happy with it. But it was, again, I gotta stop playing with this or I'm going to get really stressed out. And it's good enough for my first painting in a decade. And it looks like my boy. So I'm overall extremely pleased with it. And the experience was really lovely. Thanks for joining me in that experience. I hope you enjoyed this video. Getting a picture of this without glare was really challenging. I'm gonna get some equipment and hopefully make that easier for myself in the future. But yeah, I got a decent one. So here is the final image. Thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. You have no idea what it means to me. Yeah, I will see you next time. Have a good day. Bye!